that this painting be removed, and I didn't get an answer, and so I removed the painting from the wall in order to take it to the person responsible for works of art, and then I was stopped by a security agent who treated me like a criminal. But in this Europe, the Pope is arriving here in a month's time. Should you be showing a blasphemous picture of this type? It's an absolute disgrace. Those who are Catholic like me are being insulted all the time by paintings of this type, and if I go out and see once again that painting, then I'll still want to remove it from the wall again, because my religion, it means I can't accept seeing such a thing. We respect all other religions, and just imagine we had a painting of Muhammad with a naked woman standing next to him. Wouldn't you have objected? And when it comes to Catholics and the Christian religion, they can't put up with these things. I just wanted to make that point because they treated me like a criminal. I apologise, President. I just wanted to say this because I'm being the security people are waiting for me outside.
Also, Sie haben...
You have 1 minute to make points of order. And I think within the first few seconds you made very clear what you were talking about. I would like to make the following suggestion. If you feel you've been insulted, I suggest you contact the Quaestor responsible for works of arts in the House. There is a procedure for this, and I suggest you get in touch with that person so as to find a satisfactory solution. Moving on to the next item. This is a declaration from the Vice President of the Commission, High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy, regarding the death sentence against Asia Bibi in Pakistan. Mr. Della Vedova, over to you again.
Grazie, signor Presidente.
Thank you very much, President. Honourable members. Since Pakistan started its transition towards democracy in 2008, the European Union has strengthened its ties with Pakistan, and the adoption in 2012 of a 5-year plan has extended and deepened our political dialogue with Pakistan. And against that backdrop, we are now having discussions about many topics, including governance and human rights, and the granting of the granting of GSP Plus to Pakistan as of the 1st of January this year offers a further opportunity for deepening the dialogue and for assessing progress made in the context of human rights. As of 2008, Pakistan has a moratorium on the death penalty. The European Union reasserts regularly to Pakistan its firm opposition against the death penalty, which is a cruel and inhuman punishment. The European Union delegation keeps a close eye on the developments of the situation and asked Pakistan to maintain this moratorium. In the course of the strategic dialogue of 2014, Pakistan confirmed its intention of maintaining a moratorium on the death penalty, and the laws on blasphemy are a very important tool of oppressing religious minorities, and they lay down that an insult against the Quran can be punished with lifelong prison, and the use of denigratory comments against the Prophet are punishable by death. A series of death sentences for blasphemy have been handed down by many courts, but so far no death sentence has been carried out. Normally the defendants are acquitted or released on custody after the involvement of appeal courts, and this means that they can spend various years in jail waiting for trial. We've criticised this law because we feel that the death penalty is disproportionate compared to the seriousness of the crime. But there's another serious matter, is that there is a considerable number of blasphemy cases which are based on false declarations, false reports, and often denunciations are made against Muslims and also against non-Muslims in order to settle personal scores or order to increase sectoral and inter-religious conflict. At the moment there seems to be an increase in these cases in the last few decades. Pakistan has recognised that there's an abuse here and has committed itself to reduce these abuses, as is clear in the European Union guidelines on the promotion and the protection of freedoms of religion, which were enshrined by the Foreign Affairs Council on the 23rd of June 2013. Laws which criminalise blasphemy and which restrict religious freedoms can have a serious inhibitive effect on the freedom of expression, on the freedom of religion or belief. The European Union recommends the decriminalisation of such offences, and moreover the European Union will be firmly opposed to recourse to the death sentences or physical punishment or jail sentences as sanctions for blasphemy. In the case of Asia Bibi, the European Union is following very carefully indeed the development of the situation. Last Thursday, the Supreme Court in Lahore confirmed the sentence handed down by the first court, which condemned her to death for the offence of blasphemy in 2012. Asia Bibi now has 30 days in order to appeal the sentence at the Supreme Court of Pakistan. The High Representative, the Vice President, has expressed her concerns and her disapproval to the actions of over the actions of the Supreme Court, and condemns this death penalty. Catherine Ashton hopes that the verdict will be annulled very soon by the Supreme Court. The European Union calls upon Pakistan to guarantee to all citizens full respect of their human rights as enshrined in international conventions of which Pakistan is a part. Asia Bibi is the first woman to be condemned to death for this crime of blasphemy, and her case has given rise to a lot of clamour and unease in Europe, and despite the fact that her case is not the only one of this type. And I'm pleased that the European Parliament has committed itself in this way to human rights in Pakistan, as has been expressed in many motions for resolution and many political actions. The European Union, through its delegation in Islamabad, will carry on following very closely the case of Asia Bibi and asking for her release. Although the European Union can't get involved in a legal process that's underway, nonetheless it will take into account the possibility of raising this matter and the broader issue of the death penalty and contained in this law against contained in this law on blasphemy when it has talks with Islamabad. We call upon Islamabad so that it takes into account the reduction of the number of crimes punished with the death penalty at the moment, and respect its obligations when it comes to freedom of expression and freedom of religion and belief. Among these matters, these are matters that were dealt with in our dialogue in Islamabad in June on human rights, and the next opportunity will be next week when the Special Representative Stavros Lambrinidis will be paying a visit to Pakistan. And finally, as I've already mentioned, the GSP Plus agreement gives us a very useful framework for assessing and the development of human rights in Pakistan and promoting the development thereof. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. And before I give the floor to the first speaker, Cristian Preda, I will apologize on behalf of the session. You did indeed have 3 minutes in last debate, not 2 as was printed on my document here. So now you do have 3 minutes in this debate as well. You have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, it's În mandatul trecut am
In my last mandate, we talked about the situation of Asia Bibi and the situation of the blasphemy laws in Pakistan in 4 resolutions. But despite these pressures, the appeal of Asia Bibi was overturned by a court in these past days. This condemnation is absurd, and I would like to remind you the circumstances that led to this very important debate in the Pakistani society and that led to the condemnation. In 2009, Asia Bibi wanted to drink water from a well and offered it to a Muslim woman, but that Muslim woman refused the water under the pretext that the water was impure because Asia Bibi was a Christian. And following this altercation, Asia Bibi is now waiting for execution by hanging. And I'd like to remind you that even though blasphemy laws do have the death penalty, they don't have any standards regarding proof, the burden of proof, or the way of establishing intent. And even more problematic is that they don't have any clear indications on what is blasphemy. These laws are very usually used to persecute religious minorities, particularly the Christians. And the case of Asia Bibi is emblematic. And I hope that the appeal lodged with the Supreme Court of Pakistan will uphold the rule of law. On the other hand, the possibility of forgiving Asia Bibi that is established in the fundamental law should be taken into account in order for this woman to finish living this nightmare. And I hope at the same time that the security of Asia Bibi and her family will be ensured by the Pakistani authorities, because let's not forget that once you are accused of blasphemy, your security and your family's security is jeopardized. Most people that are accused of blasphemy are lynched or killed while they're in custody. The family of Asia Bibi was forced to go into hiding because of the death threats they received, and they are afraid, according to statements in the media, that she will be killed once she'll be released. This is why I think that the Pakistani authorities should revoke these blasphemy laws as soon as possible, because this kind of abusive process that doesn't have anything to do with tolerance will not repeat again. Thank you.
Vielen Dank für die Fraktion.
Thank you. For the Social Democrats, Mr. Khan for 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, can I first of all correct what the President's office has just said before? The judgment last week was not in the Supreme Court. In fact, the judgment was in the High Court of Lahore. And the defendant in this case still has the right to go through 4 different appeals till the final position is reached. Now, turning to my speech, we are all deeply concerned about Asia Bibi's situation. Now 4 years since she was charged, and the judicial process is still ongoing. Her health has greatly worsened during the years she has spent in almost total isolation. It is worth reminding that the death penalty for blasphemy has, however, never been carried out in Pakistan. We know that overwhelming number of cases registered were against Muslims, of which only 4% were other minorities. All individuals facing charges, their families and those who speak out against the law face terrible reprisals or lose their lives. Blasphemy laws are common across the world, but must be used to promote religious harmony and not in prosecution of others. The abuse of these laws encourages extremists to enforce their notion of truth on others, thereby increasing religious intolerance, discrimination and violence. This is unacceptable. Laws are there to safeguard and protect individuals and society as a whole. It is very sad that today many millions of people across the globe are still discriminated against, persecuted and even killed for their faith. We cannot allow that and must be vocal against it. Thank you.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on behalf of the ECR is Peter van Dalen.
President, last Monday, the Parliament took a historic decision, unanimously almost. So we decided to take this debate on Asia Bibi, and that was met with a broad support. We're talking about Asia Bibi here. We're talking about the law on blasphemy, and we're talking about the death penalty that can be imposed if there is a blasphemy against the Prophet Muhammad. And so we unanimously said, stop the death sentence against Asia Bibi, stop the blasphemy law. The thousands of other Asia Bibis who are in the same situation, this Parliament was very, very clear last Monday, and your representative needs to make sure that this death sentence is put to an end. Maybe we would even have to impose sanctions. We need to take action. action. We know that it's not just Asia Bibi. There are thousands of Asia Bibis in the same situation. The time to talk with Pakistan is over. We need action now, measures, no more words. We need to stop the law on blasphemy. We need to free Asia Bibi now. Our prayers are with her.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the Liberals and Democrats, Javier NART. Thank you, President. Well, I've got some text here. Let's get down to business. Chapter 15 of the Pakistani Penal Code, in which it's in its Article 295 lays down as a crime punishable with the death sentence anyone who directly or indirectly carries out blasphemous acts against the saintly prophet Muhammad. And I've got another text here which is also interesting. It is from the 24th of November of 2001, and this is the cooperation agreement between the European Union and Pakistan, which says that respect for human rights and democratic principles, according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, are an essential part, an essential element of this cooperation agreement. If Mrs. Ashton is able to put these two texts together, I'm sure she can, and she can coordinate these texts. Well, of course, it would be a miracle. What you've got to see is which of these two texts is most important, which predominates. We've got to stop pronouncing rhetorical speeches. If the most important text is the demand for respect of human rights as laid down in our cooperation agreement, then we've got to implement that according to Article 19. Otherwise, we're wrong. What's unacceptable is hypocrisy. So I'm talking about Asia Bibi saying Mrs. Ashton should present to the Pakistani government a demand that Article 1 and Article 19 of this cooperation agreement could be implemented. Or are we going to carry on with the same song I mentioned before, the parole, 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 words, words, words?
Vielen Dank.
Thank you, Mr. Nart. Next speaker is Dennis de Jong for the GUI group. President, for some years now I've been with Mr. de Jong in the European Parliament group when it comes to protecting religions and worship. We're still waiting for our group to get intergroup status, but while waiting we continue to work hard on this. The news about, or the condemnation of Asia Bibi shows the enormous importance when it comes to protecting the right to worship. How is it possible that people or institutions, indeed judges, don't allow people such as Asia Bibi to have the possibility of pursuing their belief? The Pakistani laws on blasphemy make it difficult or indeed impossible for religious minorities in Pakistan to express and follow their belief, despite the fact that belief for them is one of the fundamental pillars of their life. Not just in Pakistan, but in many other countries in the world, tolerance is decreasing. I still believe in initiatives such as that as inter-religious dialogue, but when you look at events in Pakistan and the fact that the Pakistani government has systematically refused to protect religious minorities, we quickly realize that such initiatives alone are not enough. In these circumstances, EU sanctions are necessary. In my view, Asia and Bibi and others must be protected when it comes to pursuing their belief.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker for the Green Group is Jean Lambert for 2 minutes.
Thank you, President. I'm speaking primarily in my role as chair of the delegation for countries of South Asia, which actually includes Pakistan. And I want to make it clear to the House that these issues have been raised on our visits there. They've been raised with authorities in terms of the death penalty in general, in terms of the case of Asia Bibi, in case of Mohammed Asghar and others. So those cases are raised. People should also be aware that there have been changes in Pakistan in recent years in accession to international human rights instruments, and that the European Union is working towards improvement there. But, as members have said, the blasphemy laws are something to which we return from time after time and obviously are of major concern to us. They're often used, as people have said, to settle scores, and that certainly seems to have been the case here. And while allegations of blasphemy are raised against minorities, I'd echo the words of my colleague here that it's also important to see that the majority of people accused under these laws are Muslim. And I think if we do not acknowledge that, we make it much more difficult for those arguing for change in Pakistan, because they are often accused of promoting a pro-Western, pro-Christian agenda rather than promoting human rights in general. And we know, people have said, that it can be dangerous to speak in favour of reforming the laws, just as it's dangerous to be accused of breaking them. We've seen over 50 people murdered by mob violence who've been accused of blasphemy, whose cases have never made it to court. And this has a real chill effect on politicians, and I think as politicians we can understand that. So I think we need to support those in Pakistan who do wish to speak out for change, who wish to speak against the death penalty, who wish to speak for reform of these laws for every citizen, whatever their faith. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Der nächste Redner für die
The next speaker is Marcel de GRAAFF from the non-attached.
President, this week in Pakistan, a court upheld the death sentence for Asia Bibi, a mother with 5 children. That is horrible. That's Sharia. That is Islam. Death and violence the part of violent ideology. There are billions and billions of euros in help that are going to this barbaric country. This Parliament and the Commission have always talked about human rights, but when it comes to Islam, it is a wall of silence. There are never any words of reproach to this type of Sharia law. Perhaps it would be time for the Commission to pull the financial aid to these countries. There are Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, and so forth, which are persecuted and killed in these countries. Help to this country should be stopped by the Commission, and we need to make sure that we overturn this sentence immediately.
Vielen Dank, Kollege de GRAAFF.
Thank you, Mr. de GRAAFF. The next speaker is Jeroen LENAERS for 2 minutes. Thank you, President. I would like to echo the words of the previous speaker who talked about the shocking case of Asia Bibi. Once again, I found it profoundly disturbing, as was the case with the debate we had beforehand, that the High Representative is not with us for this very important matter. What can we in Europe do? How can we ensure that practices of this type in a country with which we have a partnership agreement can no longer happen? Article 1 of that partnership agreement refers to shared values such as fundamental freedom, democracy and the rule of law. Although we can see with our own eyes that democracy and the rule of law simply don't exist in that country. Can we accept the fact that such events can take place in a country which has benefited so enormously from the generalised system of preferences and tariff-free trade from the European Union? I'd like to know whether the European Commission is now willing to question the use of the association agreement and this preference system, to use them as pressure to encourage Pakistan to save Asia Bibi, and also to make steps to ensure that the way in which the blasphemy law is implemented is fundamentally overhauled. Thank you.
Herzlichen Dank.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Anna Gomes for 1.5 minutes.
The condemnation to death of Asia Bibi is a dreadful event which can actually worsen relations between Pakistan and the EU. It calls into question the partnership agreement and the application of the GPS Plus to Pakistan. We regret this decision of the Pakistani government to lift this moratorium on the death penalty as a reaction to acts of terrorism. And we have asked Pakistan to reconsider. This moratorium was guaranteed by the Nawaz Sharif Prime Minister, and that was part of our request in August 2013 for Pakistan to do more in the areas of human rights and more in the area for respect of human rights. This is what Parliament demanded in order to grant GPS Plus in return to Pakistan. And Mrs. Asia Bibi is Christian, and she's the mother of 5 children, and she is a victim of the patriarchal caste system in Pakistan. But Pakistan is a vibrant society which we have contact in. I'd like to see Pakistan developing in a democratic way to become freer and safer as a country. And for this reason, we have to commit more to our relationship with Pakistan. We have to support civil society there. We have to hope that these reforms which Pakistan is considering will guarantee the rights of minorities, in particular the rights of Christian minorities which live in an abject fashion in Pakistan. The Asia Bibi case is emblematic, and the Council and the Parliament and the Commission have to send a very clear message to the Pakistani authorities. We have to offer to invest more in Pakistan. Pakistan has a key role in the region in helping to maintain peace in the region.
And your speed of speaking is quite a challenge for the translator, so thanks to them for having translated everything. Bas Belder is the next one for 1 minute.
Yes, thank you very much, President. At the beginning of this year, a Pakistani Christian said that many Muslims in his country feel that Christians are unclean, and for this reason they don't want to live in the same area or village. They are under mental anguish because of this. And it is exactly this type of social exclusion on religious grounds. Christian uncleanliness has led in 2009 between Christian Asia Bibi and a Muslim, and that led to the invoking of the law on blasphemy and a death sentence against Asia Bibi. This was a travesty of justice. What does she expect from us? She would like for us to ask the Pakistani government to protect Christians in Pakistan, and that is why I am asking the 28 member states to ask Pakistan to give Asia Bibi a fair trial, and also to give Pakistani Christians the same treatment as others, and they should be true free citizens.
Vielen Dank. Wir kommen damit zum
Thank you very much. So now we move on to the Catch the Eye procedure. The first speaker is Marijana PETIR for 1.5 minutes.
Gospodine predsjedniče, potpisala sam peticiju zajedno sa 150.000 drugih kršćana koji traže.
Thank you. Together with 150,000 other Christians who denounced the dealings with this mother of 5 children, I support this petition following the death sentence handed down to this mother of 5. Despite everything we've done, she spent 5 years in prison. She has been accused of blasphemy by some neighbours who'd insulted her because she was Christian. Asia Bibi has been told she would benefit from a pardon if she were to convert to Islam, but she refused to do this. The need to respect the rights of religious minorities in this region is essential. 2 people who were involved in protecting minorities have been murdered in the country. The European Union has to act. It's quite impossible for us to accept that this lady spent 5 years in prison, as well, not to mention a death sentence because of her creed.
Auch für eine Minute.
Jussi HALLA-AHO.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, we may condemn the capital punishment as such, yet there is a world of difference between executing a person for a murder after a due process and killing a person for criticizing an ideology or a religion. Therefore, we should not discuss death penalty as a whole. We must rather ask whether it is acceptable to sentence people to any kind of punishment for blasphemy. It is wrong from the point of view of the freedom of speech, but also because many barbarian practices, such as child marriage, are deeply rooted in religion. It is in practice impossible to criticize these practices without criticizing their religious foundations. Many European countries have their own blasphemy laws. They should be repealed, and we should set an example for the rest of the world. Thank you.
The next speaker is Anna Záborská, who also has a minute.
Thank you, President. First and foremost, I would like to thank my colleague Van Dalen for this initiative to put this item on the agenda of our meeting. For very serious reason, I wasn't able to attend the meeting on Monday. However, I sent a letter to the President of the Parliament so that at the beginning of the session he would condemn the sentence to Asia Bibi, and I was in favor of including this on the agenda. We have witnessed various death sentences in the past years on the grounds of blasphemy. The fact that no sentence has been executed is not an excuse. I'm asking how many people could have would have saved the lives if the European institutions had taken a clear stance in time. I'm asking the President of Parliament, the Commission, the Council, let's not waste another chance. The President of the Council said that Baroness Ashton has expressed her opinion on this case. My question is, why was her standpoint not published more widely? Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Frau Záborská.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Nicola CAPUTO, has 1 minute. Thank you, President. Believing in your religion and practicing your faith is a fundamental right of human beings, and there can be no restriction of this right. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen in this Pakistan, which is condemning to death a woman, a mother of 5 children, who spoke about her Catholic religion to her Muslim work colleagues. And when it came to the offer that she convert to Islam in order to save her life, she courageously refused that. What's the case now is the credibility of the Pakistani judiciary and judicial system and its credibility of its blasphemy laws. And when it comes to the blasphemy laws, they are unfair to minorities and to all people. She is the victim of an unfair judicial process, and we shouldn't allow fundamentalism here. Europe must do its bit to help. Thank you.
Vielen Dank,
Thank you very much, Mr. Caputo. And the next speaker, 1 minute, Ignazio CORRAO.
Grazie.
Thank you, President. The death penalty is a medieval tool. It's inhuman and illogical. It's absurd that we're still discussing in 2014 about the death penalty when 140 countries have abolished the death sentence in law. Asia Bibi, unless we act soon, will be brutally executed by the Pakistani people for having insulted the Prophet Muhammad. She was condemned in 2014 for blasphemy. It's difficult to believe this. The history of Asia Bibi is the emblem of a collective madness. She's been beaten, raped, arrested and condemned to death with not a shred of evidence against her. It's just because she's a Catholic, and it's a scandal. We should never negotiate any economic agreements with anyone who still practices the death penalty. It is a barbarian and inhuman tool which is still used in about 60 countries, including Pakistan. The right to life is untouchable. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for sticking to your speaking time. Thank you very much. And now we could have the reaction of Council. The representative of the Council, Mr. Della Vedova, has the floor again. Thank you very much, President, honourable members. I appreciate this very strong and active commitment to Asia Bibi in this case, and I'm sure that dialogue between the European Parliament and MEPs and members of Parliament in Pakistan can help to bring about change. I'd like to repeat the European Union is constantly committed to promoting human rights in Pakistan and to defend them on every occasion with the government, with human rights defenders and with other parties involved. And to this end, we will fully use all the instruments at our disposal, démarches, declarations, dialogue. The next visit of the President of the Pakistani Senate to Europe at the end of November, and also the visit next week to Pakistan of the EU envoy Stavros Lambrinidis, will be useful opportunities to discuss these matters. Thank you very much, President.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. The debate on this point is now closed. And now, as the next item on the agenda, we have Council and Commission statements on the topic of European ISIS fighters, or IS fighters. The first speaker is Mr. Della Vedova for the Council again. Thank you, President, honourable members. Foreign fighters who travel to Syria and Iraq represent a serious threat for security of the European Union and its member states, and also they represent a threat for the Middle East and for Northern Africa. Many of you have expressed, most recently on the 17th of September last, your concerns about the fact that thousands of foreign fighters, including citizens of member states, have taken part in fighting alongside IS, and you have asked that cooperation and the exchange of information be stepped up, and you have recalled the importance of prevention and of the prosecution of crimes, of the importance of awareness-raising programmes and for rehabilitation and reintegration of these foreign fighters. As you know, this concern is shared by the European Council, by the Council and by its member states. For more than a year, the Council has been dealing with this unprecedented threat, and in May 2013, there was an agreement on a package of 22 measures, and in August 2014 the European Council has asked for an acceleration and a deepening of these measures in order to deal with this phenomenon. In order to follow up this request, the Home Affairs Council carried out another in-depth discussion just 2 weeks ago, and the statements from the ministers have made it clear that this issue constitutes an absolute political priority. The seriousness of the situation was reasserted at the meetings of the Security Council in the UN, which adopted a binding resolution on foreign fighters. That's Security Council Resolution 2178 of 2000.